motion for approval of July 28th minutes.
And I have a couple of corrections before I got to sign them. One minor one, Ginger Schaffner's name should just have one F, and that doesn't mean anything. But and on the second page, there was kind of an incomplete sentence, and so we cleaned it up a little bit. Right in the very middle of the dark on the second page, Chairman Jeff Sweeney stated that Greg Vick and the new president of the Chamber of Commerce should get involved with pages on tourism that are on page 44. So it's just making a complete sentence.
Move to approve with those changes. Move to approve with those changes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Approval of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Public comment period.
There's no one,
Anybody
no
sign
one
up?
on the list.
Old business.
All right, Mr. Chairman, the only thing we had for business tonight was just the review from page 65 to 95 of the comprehensive plan draft. Of course, we had some other things that we've got several public records requests and things like that going on right now, so I'm a little bit overwhelmed with paperwork right now. But the other thing we're going to have to do too is I'm not sure how this is going to go next month with the meetings, because as we get as the new commissioners come on, I've got to have the mayor and the county commission have to appoint. We're going to lose our only county commissioner on, she's going to stay on, I hope, but we'll have to fill that position with a county commissioner, and or fill a position with a county commissioner, and so that'll have to happen. And I'm not sure how that's going to work timing wise. If it works great, then we'll have the meeting. But I got the same issue with the BZA as well. I had two planning commission members on the BZA, and they neither one ran for re-election. So I've got some appointments that are going to have to take place, and we'll see how that goes or whatever. But hopefully we'll move forward just like we're doing right now. And I'm hoping that all happens in a timely manner. But for us to hold a meeting, by law, I have to have a county commissioner sitting in one of these chairs. Yeah, I know Lynn.
Can we go ahead and turn the mics on since we're doing this portions? Is that working now? Okay.
Normally it's push to talk, but if you do this, it's a push to mute, and that way it'll just be live. Okay.
Okay.
I can imagine that Lynn already has a lot of notes to give me at the end of the meeting, because she does a really good job of that. But and thank you, Lynn, for your diligence on that. That's very helpful to me. But the goal is, for you guys to have read over it and note any thing that is concerning to you, or anything that you think should be advanced or elevated to some higher degree of importance or detail, or any of those things. Always consider this the base draft, and from here we can always whittle away, and we can always add to. That's the goal. And keep in mind and remember that these notes that we're making as we go are not amending the book yet. I will amend the book after the public comments from the public side, and you guys have come together. And what I'll do is I'll give you a draft. Once it comes back, once we have to do public engagement, I'll come back to you guys and I'll have a list of all the notes that you guys have recommended and all the notes that the public has recommended, and you will have an opportunity to digest those ideas and then vote on a final version. So with that, just, if anybody has any recommendations?
I liked the whole flavor of the rural preservations. I was very impressed with all that. The only really thing I saw is page 86 and 87. There's some redundancy.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering who
Whoa,
had
you
actually
jumped
read
way
it.
ahead.
You did read it, yay!
So under family farms and zoning densities and on the family farms, Chris, consider adding something about the century farms.
Okay.
People really get into all that, and they are very important. But there's a lot of redundancy right there in those two sections.
Yeah, there's actual duplicate
Yeah, it's
paragraphs.
almost word for word.
Well,
Yes,
okay.
it is word for word.
Yeah, well, that's a great catch. Where are the duplicate paragraphs, do you?
Page,
Well, rural development,
yep,
on that page on 86, the rural development,
It's family farms and
Yeah.
the zoning
zoning.
densities.
it added one sentence to the end of,
Okay.
So just,
added conservation
just check
easements
them
to
and pick one.
Okay, redundant, okay.
And then agriculture, the same thing. One page to the other, 86 and
I'll
85,
not catch you.
bottom of the page.
86 and 85,
Yeah,
okay.
that is. I didn't catch that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if, what I may do is I'll reach out to Volkert, to my, people that were helping me with this, to find out why there's so much redundancy in this area. I'm wondering if it's because each one of these is under a different heading and they felt like each one should have that
I
same.
don't agree with that.
Well, I just want to ask. I want
Yeah.
to find out what that is before I start going and chopping things up.
I would
And
say.
see if there's some reason why it should be.
There,
I got one I'd like to bring up. Some zoning densities,
What
outside
page?
urban growth
Where are
boundary.
you, Kenna?
On page 87, and it goes on in quite a detail on bottom back there. The zoning for single-family home sites should rise to a density of 1 unit per 3 acres.
So,
yep,
I thought we basically decided we didn't want to do that,
all right.
and wanted to stay with our 1 acre situation.
So zoning density, actually, that's another duplicate section in
is.
two different, I mean,
Yeah.
it's two different headings.
repeated.
On the back in there, it goes into more detail on it.
Okay.
I mean, we discussed it, but I think
We discussed
even,
thinking about it, but basically, I thought we just said, well, we don't really
Yeah.
feel like we need to do that.
Yeah, and I think that this was being written as we were having those conversations, and I think that did not get cut out of there, but that's a good point because that was already something that has been,
And those, Kennan, were just single lots, like a father giving a daughter an acre of land to build that. Didn't have anything to do with subdivisions or, the,
well, what this
Meaning-
was, if you remember, we had some conversations and we were trying to get a future land use map approved so that I could include it in here and that map would be approved. And we had a conversation about whether we should create an area or areas in the county where the minimum lot size would be 3 acres. And so, and then that, of course, that failed. But I was already having these conversations, and I think this stuff ended up in here.
That's when we were looking at 231 and the main
Yeah.
corridors, how far off the road could be
That's
3
right,
acres,
I
then it
remember
could go to 1 acre.
Yes, but you guys did ask me to create overlay zones like we did in the Bell Buckle Lane and 231 North, where the density would be that 3-acre lots, just in a 600-foot strip
Right.
along the major highway, along all the highways.
Yeah, I think we did that. I think we.
Yeah, so what I'll do is, I'll make sure that I amend these wherever it appears, because again, it's a lot of duplicate thing. Each heading has very similar, and in some cases maybe one extra sentence, but it has very similar language. So, I'll address it.
Yeah, so you're gonna ask if it's needed to be spelled out in each section
I'm gonna ask
separately,
why.
or why?
Is there an
okay.
important reason why
Yeah.
in this type of document? Is that why they're doing it? And if so, can we eliminate that redundancy? And if you say I shouldn't, then why shouldn't I?
Right.
Then I can come back and tell you.
We're gonna have a hard time explaining to somebody that bought a 5-acre tract a few years ago why he can't give his children a lot to build a house on. I mean, really and truly. And,
Yeah.
it starts to get to be an elitist thing.
Yeah.
So Chris, on page 78, we talk about commercial solar energy developments. I know Reed's gonna jump on this, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring it up, but we have gotta do a better job of holding them accountable to what they agree to do on the front end before we allow them to open. I'm gonna make sure that we've got that in our package, that we are gonna require them to fulfill 100% of their requirements before they're allowed to use the facility.
On 78, are you talking about the table that has a renewable energy overlay zone? Okay.
That wouldn't be in this document as much as it needs to be revised in our
Zoning,
actual book.
regulations.
Yeah, this is a
This is,
a
verbatim
big
out of the
picture,
book.
macro
no, that-
level.
I
Yeah.
don't want us to overlook that, because I felt like we had our first one come in here, we all learned a lot from it.
Well, the goal with the renewable energy overlay zone was, we knew we had got caught without some regulations, and we knew we were gonna have one.
Yeah.
The goal was to make sure that we could do everything we could within the law to make sure that they could only put them in the future in certain areas, and areas where they just really don't wanna be. And so it's like, there's no reason why they shouldn't go there, cause, where they couldn't go there, cause they have access to TVA lines and be able to get to the grid just like they do in the other places. But
Yeah.
other places are more valuable to the community, tax-wise, and potential for industry and things like that, which that was the problem with that site they picked, was that was, at the time, one of only two multi-hundred-acre sites with infrastructure in the entire county. And that infrastructure, to some extent, had been bought and paid for by taxpayers already, and so we already had this investment, and the city and the county would, as you know, sort of, when they needed something, if they didn't have any industrial land, they would make these little small bites. And I think the goal was, at some point in time, there's this big tract of land, it's in a revocable trust, and it's probably not gonna get sold, and we can just get what we want when we need it, and that didn't happen. It got pulled out from under us, and so then there was this need, and some of you guys stepped up to the plate big time. Reed was very helpful to us to be able to get this done, and we just had to do a deep dive and immerse ourselves in the language of solar energy, and in order to write this regulation. And the other thing we had to do was make sure that in the preamble of this regulation that we clearly stated what the intent of it was, and that the intent was within the law, within our boundaries, legal boundaries. So
The other thing that happened that we just discovered, and I don't know how we deal with it, but some point in the process, the county got 30 acres out of this deal, and the plans got redrawn. And a lot of the things that we had put in on the front end got washed. It was concerning buffers and setbacks, and then it went to the BZ, it didn't come back to us, it went to the BZA. They weren't paying any attention to it. The county just wanted the 30 acres to put a chemical plant on. And, so I don't know how we stop that in our process where things happen where we're really not getting to see the final product before it gets a done deal.
Well, in that situation, that was the regulations kind of always designed that way. In fact, they first started off, it was very minimal, and of course they had to go, we just had a list of standards, and they had to go to the BZA and to get those 12 standards or whatever they were. Just had to meet those 12 standards with a site plan. And that was the first iteration, and of course and what that really was a placeholder. We had to get something in place, down and dirty, to make sure that we didn't, the thing is it had really intense buffering requirements, like 500 feet almost, I think, all the way around the entire property.
75.
We knew that 475 something, we knew from the beginning that we had to have something besides that would never hold up in court if that's all we had. So what we did is we basically created this entire system where we had two different paths. One, the county would map out an area of Bedford County that started with basically a less than 5% topography. So basically all the flatter areas of the county, we started there. We started whittling away areas that we felt like had some higher value and higher development value. And then the areas that were left, we felt like that was a great opportunity for those farmers and those landowners in those areas who wouldn't normally have access to be able to sell their property for the type of money that, say, somebody on the north side of the county has. These people would have these opportunities that they might not have had before. So it's a kind of a leveling of the playing field, but it also allowed these things to be in areas where you didn't see them from a mile away, and you didn't see that glare and that kind of stuff, because if you've seen them up close, like if you drive into Huntsville, for instance, there's one on the left, they look very industrial, and if they're close to the road and they're not buffered properly, they look awful. Over time, they look awful. They're interesting looking when you first see one, but after the interest goes away and you've seen it, then they're very industrial. So that was the goal of that, was to try to make the regulations more court friendly, to make sure that we weren't overdoing it. And so the way we essentially came about that was we said, okay, if we map this area and a person is willing to put one of these things in this area where the county commission has looked at this map and they've decided, okay, this is the best place for solar energy projects in the future. If you're willing to do that, then it's a trip to the BZA, because we've already zoned it that way.
Designated it.
And so it's a trip to the BZA, and the setbacks are 75 feet. You still have to do some landscaping and stuff like that. You still have, if there's an existing tree line, you have to maintain that and keep it, and those kind of things. But the regulations are essentially the same, but what we also said is, because we want it to survive a court battle, is we said, okay, we're okay if you put it anywhere in the county that you want to try to put one, as long as the county commission will rezone it for you. So we created a mapped area that has a particular zone, and say, okay, if you do this, you put them here, this is an easier path. But if you want to go next door to Walmart here in town, let's just say it's in the county, but it's right next to Walmart, right where all the high valued property is. If you want to put it there, fine. You have to go to the county commission, have to have it rezoned to a particular district. And those setbacks they're identical to what we originally passed. They're harder. It's harder to do it, and it disincentivizes a person from doing it, because it makes the land more restrictive And so it really, what it does is it incentivizes people that are gonna do it, if they definitely wanna do it, to put them in an area where we want them to be, or where we're okay with it. Not necessarily, it's not where we want them, it's where it's acceptable, because we can't zone something out of existence. We even have regulations in our book for adult entertainment. You have to have some place for people to do these things, and so that's the law. So that's what we have, is we have two paths. So then, okay, when this thing was being developed, we had actually 3 different iterations of the law. We had the first iteration, which I told you about, was just a quick trip to the BZA, but you had these pretty intense standards that you had to follow. Then we started learning more and growing, and we went and revised it again and made it even better. It was kind of a hybrid between where we were and where we are now. And then eventually, once we felt like we had a really good plan, we went forward and revised it a third time, or revised it a second time, and have this third iteration. And, you know, we won this national award for it. I mean, there's dozens of counties in the state and all across the country that are using our plan, because it just wasn't a good way to do this before that. And so, and we were forced to have to learn it, because there wasn't anything. Normally, I'm looking for other people to see what they do and how they're solving problems, and we try not to recreate the wheel. But this was one where we had to create the wheel. And so that's how we did. Now, to address what Reed was saying, is that once it did its thing, once we had, it was already an approved thing. That's when you had industrial development people, Shane and them, that they were trying to get that 30 acres by rezoning that piece of property to what it actually was, which is the solar farm. By actually rezoning it, they were able to reduce the setbacks to 75 feet instead of the 475 or whatever the other one is. And that freed up enough acreage for them to gift that property to the Industrial Development Committee, or whatever that's called. They're the ones that technically own it, I guess, until it's all, I guess it's the IDB, Industrial Development Board.
That's who currently has.
Yeah, they technically, I think when you have a TIF or something like that, the IDB will continue to own that property until until the taxes are resolved or whatever. So some mechanism like that. But that's what happened there. That was just the exploitation of what we had. We had a system, and that's what they felt like they needed to do to get that industry. So that's how that happened.
I have one other thing. On page 70, Chris, right in the middle, the history of zoning in Bedford County. I suggest underneath that last, where it says Regional Planning Commission, take that paragraph and add up there to the history. Because really under the history right now, all you have is building codes began in 2006 and building codes enforcement and building code. The planning commission needs to be up there.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay. The wording in all of it's okay.
Okay.
In that same, I think it's that same section, there's one section which talks about the history of zoning. Oh, yeah, it's before that, so starts the history of zoning, and then it goes into, I think there's just a lot of extra fluff in this document that doesn't need to be, and I'm not really sure why they're sticking in all of these out of other state histories. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's just taking up space, and it doesn't really add anything to our document. You know, on page 70, and
You talking about the Euclid versus Ambler?
yeah, and then the New York case.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, in their defense,
I mean, I get
this
it.
language is, all this case law stuff's in every one of these I've ever seen. It just gives a basis for the people who are not doing this for a living, who want to understand, you really want them to understand why we have the right to, why a county has the legal authority to do some of these things, and how that came about. That's what all that stuff does. But you guys are the bosses, so.
I mean, there's just a lot of redundancy in this document, and I think we also have to look at it from the perspective of a layperson, agreed, you know, and that's, I guess I get that point of view that, you know, it's trying to explain to the layperson, the general public, how zoning came about and what have you, but at the same time, this ain't easy to read, okay? And a lot of it is because the headings are such a disaster. I mean, they're awful. You
Yeah.
know, it's not organized, and, you know, if somebody doesn't really have a lot of background in this, it's just not a pleasure to read. It's just really not. And I think it could really be cleaned up by clearing up a lot of, you know, making the headings more concise, you know, combining different sections instead of all these little choppy paragraphs. It's just very hard to read. That's a big criticism that I have on this document. Another thing that really frustrated me in reading this, there's a lot of verbiage about, you know, it should blah, 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 and should this and that and whatever. But I got to the very end of the document and I was like, finally, yes, like the last page, it starts giving examples. And there were so many times when it's talking about such and such, and I'm thinking, give an example. Let the layperson be able to understand what you're talking about so it's not just a big bunch of fluff. And I'll give you an example of that. Hold on.
Lynn, while you're looking, I'm fine with the Amber Realty Company because it gives case law. I do not understand the New York City part. I don't see what that's relevant to what we're working on.
Just
Okay.
the history.
Let's see here.
Yeah, again, it's just an educational,
Okay, so for example,
Opportunity.
on page 88, and this is just one example, but there's many of these. Bedford County should this is where it's giving suggestions. Bedford County should actively pursue opportunities for the private development of alternative modes of mobility within the MGA and villages to reduce traffic congestion and enhance pedestrian and bicycle access to key locations. Okay. Give me an example. How are we gonna do that? What would be an example of how we would pursue private development? Even just one. Then following, Bedford County should adopt policies that prioritize strategic capital, blah, 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 blah. Ensuring that resources are distributed more effectively to enhance the quality. Give me an example of that. Like, we're paying you to give us knowledge. I just think it would be such a much stronger document if we had more examples, and then you could see where I'm like, yeah, great, on page 92. They do exactly that. They say, as an example, see the Liberty RVN on the future land use map. Great, I'm like, thank you for that example. Also, this includes, okay, yeah. They give examples at the end, but I just think it could be a lot better going through the document with more examples. Also, we need to update their language to match our new subdivision revisions if we ever get around to finalizing those revisions. And that is on what page is that on, do you remember?
If and when we get the decentralized sewer
Yeah,
approved,
that could be added
would
in.
that go in this?
Yeah,
package underneath that phase so everybody knows exactly what it
It's
stands
mentioned in
for?
there just a little bit.
There's a little bit in there, you're right.
Yeah, but it's not everything we've been
But
working
no,
on.
we need to beef it up, right?
So when we have people that come in and do public speaking and ask, you know, what is this? What does it amount to? What's required? Do they have a 100% alternative system that's going in beside this for backup? Is it 50%? We need to be able, they need to be able to
To be able
pick the
to,
document up
right.
and understand what that means.
Agreed.
That's the regulation.
But they need to know that we've worked on
That-
that and that it's in here, not just a one
that's
paragraph.
part of our plan for our county is to
We
incorporate
can give them a
these-
page or
Right.
an example like Lynn's saying.
where are you guys talking? I'm lost.
There is something in there about the decentralized,
Page
right?
88,
Page
Right, Alan?
88, under provisions
Thank
of
you.
robust public services. So I think Lynn's request for an example is fine, even if we could give them a page number out of our zoning resolution that they can go to and say, oh, okay, I've got an understanding now of what that means.
Okay.
I'm not saying it has to be in this, but they have to know where to go to
Yeah.
get the example of it.
so
Right.
where in our subregs that we,
Yeah, it's page
Well, it's not in there yet.
paragraph
but
4.
It will
when
be.
we get it, yeah.
I mean, this thing would be 400 pages, for
Right.
example,
I
everything. But if we
agree.
just give them a book
I
and
agree
page.
with the reference, and I would also do that, if we can, with the tables and the figures, because it's like, okay, they give you a table, blah, 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 and then you're like shuffling through the entire document trying to find the page. If they just put figure 8, page, blah, blah, blah in the document, it would make it so much more user-friendly, I think, for that.
So the page number with the figure.
Yeah,
I said, who did this?
But
I guess.
I mean, I wanna counter argue some of that. This
Chris,
is
I don't know
future
who-
land
he's
use.
referring
If
to
we've
somebody,
already
so I don't
done
know.
something, it shouldn't even be in here.
But we haven't approved what Alan's group has been working on.
Yeah, yes, but
Okay.
hopefully
But
soon.
we can say that, you know, there is an approved decentralized system in our subregs.
Yeah, that's all you would need to
That's all
say.
you need to put in there.
Cause this is
You don't need to be a
just,
page number, just say, we have an approved decentralized system.
Right, and the way I plan to present it to you guys is that we amend the subreg. What we do is create a manual, a technical manual, because much of the way that the report that they gave back to me is written much like a manual anyway. So it's not gonna take a great deal of work to convert it to a technical manual. Then cite the technical manual in the subregs.
yeah,
And that way, it makes it easier to do it. And then if we ever amend the technical
We-
manual, I'm
we
not
don't have
having
to-
to reformat
right.
an entire
everything,
book.
exactly.
So that's kind of the way we would do that. And they have, and I met with them, and they voted to send it back to me, you know, kind of with the recommendations that I'd made. And then, so now it's back in my hands, and as soon as I get done with it, it'll go to the county commission and
And then
come back,
your-
ultimately come back here for you guys to approve.
I think another thing is, on some terms that are not quite as familiar, like for example, maybe I'm ignorant, but I've never really, I could look it up, but it'd make it easier on some like funkier terms like agrihood. You know, it would be beneficial, I think, to include, and there are definitions of some things in this comprehensive plan, but things that are just a little bit outside of the ordinary, like agrihood, there were a few of those terms that I
I've
thought,
been
oh,
in this business for all my life, and I still hadn't heard of agro.
thank you, I don't feel so stupid then.
That's good.
Made
point.
up one, she's
Yeah.
made up a word.
That's a good
It's
point.
a thing.
Um,
And, you know, in conversation with a couple commissioners, really like the idea of the agri-hoods and.
can you give us an example of an agrihood?
Yeah, an agri-hood, there are several examples, really good
It
examples.
sounds cool.
Yeah, what they are is it's a mixed-use development that has agricultural as a component of the mixed use. And so typically they have, they'll have some commercial element. So let's just say you may have a farm-to-table restaurant as a component of that, which would normally require commercial zoning. And then you might have some maybe higher density development or residential development around just the commercial component. And then further out, you have lots as big as 6 or 7 acres. and then you may have you may have farming elements, you may have equine elements, you may have a lot of different things going on, and cumulatively, the density for a development like that might be one house per 3 acres or something like that, which is way less dense than what we would normally require.
Is that something that would fall under the new A2 zoning?
It could. I mean, we just, once I give you guys something, we can kind of make that decision. And we could create an entirely separate zoning classification for it if that's what you wanted to do, rather than, you know,
Put it within some,
complicate a bunch of tables.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a popular thing, and what it does is it provides a lifestyle that suits both the people who like the bigger lots and people who like a little high density, but they also want the amenities associated with that, and then it creates lots of tax revenue as well when you have the restaurants and the shops and things, and then maybe the shops are selling stuff. It would be maybe like a commercialized version of kind of like what Reed does, you know, where he's got a shop and he's selling kind of locally grown things or whatever, but maybe amped up a little bit.
your own agri-hood.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But anyway, that's kind of, now I have a plan on my desk for a quasi-agri-hood right now, but
Oh,
the
really?
developer has not made his mind up because of what's happening tax-wise, you know, all the things, the economy. He's a little worried. That would be right on the county line if anybody wants.
Is that the one you brought before us,
Yeah.
down around Rover at the
Yes.
Rutherford County line?
Yeah.
I was thinking of that.
Yeah, and I mean, it has 6-acre lots, 5-acre lots, 4-acre lots. I think the smallest residential lot is 2 acres. It's right up
It was
everybody's
interesting.
alley. It just happens to have some commercial components to it. So, you know, like a wedding venue and a restaurant and stuff like that. But ponds for fishing and has raised beds and things for, you know, it's a really interesting concept, very walkable, has an equine element to it where they have paddocks for horses and things like that, and a barn, community barn and that kind of thing. So it's very interesting. These are very upper echelon type homes would be in it. It'd be totally a different demographic than what we're used to, but there's no small lots in it. There's no trade-offs in that regard. It's just you know, there's 2 ways that they could go about doing it. They could either just zone the front of it commercial and leave the rest ag, or they could just do a PUD. It's perfect for a PUD. That way they can
Right.
do everything they want to do with one zoning classification, and it also is a great education for people to have a better understanding of what a PUD is, because
Right.
most people have this perception that all PUDs are the same and they're all tiny lots, and this is exactly the opposite of that. So, so anyway, you know, I've talked to them and a couple times, and they're still studying the idea, but they've hired a very professional architect, and they have a really interesting plan, you know, so we'll see. I don't know if they'll make it or
That
not.
covers several hundred acres.
Yeah, it's about 300 acres.
I have one more thing. So I've brought this up before, and I don't wanna keep beating a dead horse, and I guess I'm posing it as a question, cause I don't know the answer. We had talked about, you know, the A2 going along 82 east, and it stops on let's see, that would be the south line of 82, I guess, instead of encompassing both sides of 82. And this would generally go not just for this particular street, but for anything.
This a map you're looking at?
Yeah, it's on the future land use map. So, it just
Page
seems odd to
64.
me that it would stop at one, I just can't really envision how that would look with A2 zoning on one side of a highway and not on the other side. And when I talked to you about it before, you had said, well, this isn't set in stone, and yeah, we could, you know, extend it to encompass the other side of 82. But maybe we don't want to, I don't know, I'm throwing it out there for discussion because it's kind of nagging at me, and also in maybe crossing 231 onto Edie Road. I'm just not sure if I agree with those boundaries. And then the green area, the park area, that's outside of our county?
On the west side?
Yeah, is
Yeah,
that the only
that's-
park that we,
Yeah, I think that's Henry Horton State Park.
so why is that even on the map then, if it's not in our county?
I think it's just part of the GIS map that was there. It was part of the base layer. And it's where nobody's talking about it. It just happens to be visible.
Okay.
There's nothing referencing it in here.
I don't know, so what does everybody think?
So on the, behind the airport, on the east side, Shelville Power happens to have robust sewer infrastructure. And so anything that's in that area, you know, is subject to being, at some point in time, it's gonna be, a lot of this is gonna be in the city in our lifetime. So that's the reason why that was in there, because they envision maybe a north-south corridor from, say, the bypass north to 82, kind of in that general vicinity, to try to develop the east side of the airport and exploit the airport and try to have more. And I know there was a company, you know, looking at the new FBO and that on the, say, the south side of the airport. So those are just things the city's talking about. We're just trying to, if there's an opportunity where the county could participate in something that where we would get the tax revenue for a certain period of time, it's gonna be developed at some point in time anyway. So we know that they've got the infrastructure there. So that's the reason why. That's the reason for that.
So do you think it should stop at that line?
I'm not necessarily saying to stop. This is your map. So
Well,
I'm
that's
just.
why I'm asking, because,
yeah.
you know, opening it for discussion.
But on the north side of it, there are some pretty nice homes on the north side of it. So, I mean, at that level, I mean, it's going to be, if that ever happens, and it may not ever happen, but if it ever happened, then, you know, there'd be an intersection right there, and I would think that anything east of that you'd definitely want to preserve, and then, and you may want to preserve what's to the north of it. I don't know. These are just, again, it's not how something's going to be zoned. It's how we're imagining
vision.
what could be.
Mm-hmm.
And so it supports, like in the future rezoning, it is supportive of those decisions that are being made in the future. And that's what these things do. When you think about, like earlier, we were talking about multimodal transportation, alternatives, and all those kind of things. Those are not things that we're necessarily going to build. Those are things where if we put it in a document, then we could over time, we could tweak our regulations so that if a developer built in that corridor that we've identified, then they would be required to put in the sidewalks. And over time, those kind of fill in, and then let's just say you've got in an area that you know is going to be developed. Let's just say take Jennings Lane, for instance. All that's going to be in the city at some point in time. If the developers along Jennings Lane were building sidewalk systems over time, eventually those would connect. But let's just say that you've got an area sits undeveloped for a long period of time, and the people just don't want to. They don't want to sell. And you've got an area that where you could fill in with a sidewalk. That's a grant opportunity. If you have it in if you've identified those things in your land use plan, then when you go to TDOT to ask for a TAP grant to be able to do a sidewalk project that fills in an empty space, you've got the justification for that grant. If you didn't have that, you'd have almost no justification for it. So, because you're just saying, well, this is just some flippant idea that we came up with 2 weeks ago because we saw this opportunity. What it says is, no, we've been thinking about this for a long time, and these are the things that we think are going to improve the quality of life for people on Jennings Lane. You know, that's the kind of, and I'm just using that as an example, but it could be that way anywhere. So let's just say you want to identify a future bike path or a future running path for people to do 5Ks or 10Ks or whatever. Same thing, you identify those paths on a map, and you publish the map in your land use plan, and anybody that does anything along those corridors could be required, if we put the regulations in, could be required to build that sort of that pedestrian transportation infrastructure at their expense as part of that development. rather than the county having to create a whole department just to do that, or ask Mark to do it in his budget, so. But anyway, that's some of the things, like some of this stuff seems so, and I know it does, it just seems so like otherworldly when you think about the budget that we have,
Right.
but it's for future opportunities, yeah.
Chris, I wanted to ask a question. I know right now that Beca's putting in a 12-inch water line on Union Will-Decent Road. How do we as a planning commission find I mean, the only reason I know is because we're dealing with water pressure issues. But when we're looking at developments coming in, how do we know what the utility companies are working on for the next, I think they had a $7 million grant to do that. I mean, that's important for us. It's important for Brian to know, Mark to know. I feel like we're kind of left out of a lot of the utility information, and we're finding out it after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good point.
I'm concerned about that for the future of Bedford County, because like we had an issue at Riverbend. Well, Riverbend has a 2-inch water line
Mm-hmm.
on their main street, 2-inch.
Yeah,
Not 6-inch, not 8-inch, it's a 2-inch main water line.
well,
And so has gotten approved, and we're finding out after the fact that it was supposed to have 60 pounds of pressure. By the time it goes through the water lines and gets to the house, it's 40 or 35. We worry about water suppression, fire suppression. They tell us they're not in the fire business. But if we're gonna be looking at developments with, like Rover, where we're looking at $1 million+ homes, we need to know that information, because we may have to start requiring water suppression system on
Mhm.
2-story homes, or, Mark and Brian may come up with stuff that they need in. Mark needs to know that what's coming in. It's that, the utilities for gas and water are scaring me long-term, because I don't see a fix.
right,
There's not planning or we're not told of where that money's gonna come from. And we keep, every time we add a house, that water pressure drops.
right. So I could answer some of that, and then Kenan is sitting on the board here. He used to be on the BCUD board, so he has answers to a lot of questions. But we've tried to ask BCUD before if they would give us copies of their infrastructure maps, and they won't do it. They consider that to be proprietary information, because no, they won't. But now, on an individual basis, for instance, if somebody brings in a plat for a subdivision, they have to sign off on that plat, and that's their job, is to look at it from an engineering perspective and determine whether or not they can serve it, the pressure, amount of water and the flow and the amount of pressure that it's gonna take to serve those at whatever number of houses as those are. So they have to sign those plats, and so that's when we find out, if there's a 12-inch line or a 6-inch line, or in most
Or
cases
two.
a 4-inch line, sometimes 2-inch
But
lines.
that's after the fact.
No, that's before you guys.
And so if
approve.
they sign off on it and say, yeah, you've got 60 pounds of pressure, which we've got an issue with right now, by the time it goes through all the regulators, the fire suppression and everything else, we're at 37 or 40.
Yeah.
We're not at 60, which a lot of the apparatuses that we have require minimum 60 pounds of pressure. So we're not getting that in the structure. We're getting 20% less than that.
The requirement from the state, from the state standpoint, 20 pounds at the meter.
I know that, but when they sign off that, yes, you have 60 pounds and we have 47, that's a big issue.
Well, it's big, it's been really big for us in the past, mostly in the industrialized areas, because for fire control systems. So for a fire control system, you need about 23 pounds of pressure. And depending on what's going on with that tank, there are different times of the day, like they basically practically empty that tank twice a day. When they water the chickens in the morning, when they water the chickens in the afternoon. So a couple times a day that tank is really low and the pressure is really low. And there's a couple twice a day, there's times when it's practically full. Not full, but to the level that they rise to, and that's based on the demand and stuff like that in the area, because if they fill it all the way up, there's not enough demand for that. So until there's more development in the area, and that just goes back to a long-term decision that happened that with Walmart distribution. Everybody knows the story, I think, but it happened, and that's what we're stuck with, and it's just as hard for B-Cut as it is for the rest of us to have to stomach, dealing with that. But you're gonna have moments where you're not gonna have enough pressure to serve, a fire control system. Well, if you've got 400 people in the jail that can't get out and you get a fire, or if you got people in the hospital that have no freedom of movement and you have a fire, it's complicated, and all that stuff is in that area. Now they're doing some major infrastructure improvements right now. They got a big grant, and they're doing those improvements right now, and they say that they're gonna have all the water in the world on that corridor in a short period of time.
Where's that?
That's 231 North Corridor. So I think it's in the process. The gas situation, that's a $30-40 million problem. That's paying for a gas line to come
Yeah,
from Joe B. Jackson.
And there's no grants for gas.
So,
But all we can do is depend on, when somebody brings a development to us, is depend on who's got to sign the document.
right.
So we shouldn't have to know all the details. We just depend on the people that signing that document saying that the stuff's gonna be there. That's all we need to know.
Yeah, they're
Right, but
stamping it.
ultimately, we're going to get blamed when it's
We're
not
gonna
there.
get blamed, but we're gonna blame them, then they shouldn't have signed it.
And if they've approved X amount of lots,
You're the only one that decided in here.
and if they've,
Buck stop with you.
Yeah, that's why I think the people that come up here to us shouldn't be complaining to us as much as they are the ones signing that document.
and
They're the ones that said it'll work.
The Bedford Utility has always told you that they're not in the fire protection business. It's just that simple.
Every day.
Well,
So
they don't have the money to be.
you know,
Never have.
we depend on them. That's all we depend on that saying, they say it's gonna work. If it don't work, I mean, that's all we got to go on.
yeah,
And just to answer that right there, us that has to sign it with that state statute, we have to do that, and we have to be, we're the liable party.
Yeah, you're the
So
liable.
if something goes haywire and they come after y'all, then you can come back on the
That's
Inlet
right.
roads or whatever, you can come back on B-Cut for water protection. I mean,
Yeah.
whoever signs those plans,
Yeah.
it's left up on you to make sure that.
same with
I mean,
TDEC.
it's the
on
same thing with the city.
soils,
I mean, the
everything.
city, they complain to the city, about, why are we doing this? And the city said, well, they said it would handle it. Well, that's all you can depend on, the professionals that know.
Chris, or Mr. Chairman,
And what worked years ago,
while we're looking at this,
it's changed.
I
so much,
understand
you know.
Tennessee Downs did some kind of deal against B-Cut about not having water and all that, and that they made some kind of arrangement that they're getting sewer and water out there?
Well, that's the reason why I know that they've got, well, one, because my relationship with TDEC and this board that the governor put me on. So I know that was approved because that was in a meeting and several meetings that came up, and I know B-Cut got approved for that grant, and they got that new straw, I guess, in the water, and so and then when they finally did sign an MOU with Tennessee Downs to provide the water. They say they can give them all the water their water need, and they engineered what they thought their water demand would be, and that's what they put in their MOU, and I think they finally did agree to sign the MOU, and then there was a grant that was given to us by the state for $10 million towards that sewer infrastructure improvement.
So, now that they're gonna have water and sewer out there on that property, right now it's zone C1, but they wanna do other stuff with it, are we gonna have to rezone all that property, or?
Well, I mean, they haven't shown me anything that's gonna require anything different than that, but there may be, because the complexity of what they're gonna do could change some of that, and we'll just have to deal with that as it comes to us. So,
Stay tuned.
But,
Yeah.
so all our future land use stuff is, all of a sudden, we've got water and sewer out on 231 North. And of course,
Are there plans to run sewer?
Yes.
Who's
Yeah.
paying for it?
Yeah,
Sherwood
grant.
Power.
So does that mean they're gonna annex that in when that happens?
Well, I know they would like to. There's some complexities with it right now.
but it's outside our urban
Josh?
growth boundaries.
Yeah.
So in March, I'm told, the city wants to approach us about extending their urban growth boundary. That will require the mayor to appoint a coordinating committee per state law, and the members of that committee are written in the stone in the law. You'll have to put, it's the same committee that would have been put together when this board was first formed. And so he has to put that back together. It'll have somebody from every municipality in the county. Once, if any city, any municipality wants to extend their urban growth boundary, once they start that process, they all have an opportunity to come and debate with this committee to try to extend their urban growth boundaries. I do know that Wartrace would like to do the same thing. I have no information from Bell Buckle that they intend to do anything. I've heard nothing from Normandy, but it doesn't mean that in March they won't all have ideas about what they might want to do. But that'll happen. It'll happen pretty soon. Right now, that they've exercised all of their urban growth boundary on the north side, where Duxon is. And so, in order for them to annex anything, they have to have the urban growth boundary. They're not allowed to annex outside the urban growth boundary. So that right now, it can't happen. Anything that happens on our end while this stuff is being worked out, it benefits us, benefits the county. So, for instance, that go-kart track is phenomenally successful, and so they're getting ready to expand and add another track. And so they've had over 30,000 visitors over there since they started. So it's done really well, and not a single person has complained about it. So
You can't hear it, that's why.
yeah, they're go-karts. They're not race cars. So anyway, it's been a really great use for that particular piece of property. And they're expanding. They're international. They're part of some international kart racing program. They go to Italy and England and Spain and all these different places. So it's pretty interesting. And I've been there on a weekend just to watch it, kind of see what's going on, and it's a lot happening over there.
That'll be a game changer when they get that out to there.
Yeah.
So-
So as long as we can keep those things and keep them in the county for a while, we'll benefit from that dramatically. But it's not gonna stay that way forever. Reed's gonna be in the city limits here before it's over with.
But,
I said Reed's gonna be in the city limits before it's over with.
no, I won't.
He's out of here.
Well, I know we've gotten off on a tangent. Is there anybody else got anything about the land use plan?
How far do you think they'll wanna go with the North Boundary? The Bell Buckle Lane?
No, that's past the Walk Lane.
No, they'll wanna go past, but they'll
That's
wanna
past-
go,
that's past
they'll
Belleville,
probably
right?
wanna go to, Unionville Decent, my guess.
Okay, decent.
But what I wanna fight for on our end, what I think is worth fighting for, is to preserve everything north of Unionville Decent Road as rural. So part of this process, as I think we talked about this last month, is I've got a guy from the state who's he's a planner at the state level, and he's gonna come in and help us, and we're gonna create yet more maps. And what we wanna do is create, a designated rural area. By law, we can actually create designated farm areas, but if we create these designated rural areas, then we can limit the residential growth to just single lot subdivisions, things like that. So, that way, people can do everything that you guys want them to be able to do, but as far as like big multi-lot residential developments, we can actually limit some of that kind of stuff.
In other words, like what's right across the Bedford County line,
Exactly.
that backs up to literally the line.
So if we could have designated that area as, preserve it as a designated rural area, see, we could stop it from encroaching across the county line at least anyway. So that's some of the things that I wanna do and that we're gonna do. I'm just waiting for them to kinda get freed up to come down here to work on that with me. The other thing I would like to do this year is work on a TDR, it's called TDR, Transfer of Development Rights. They put it in the state law a couple of years ago. Nobody's done it yet. But one of our goals, if our goals are to preserve farmland without encroaching on people's land use rights, and it's a complicated thing to do, and right now the state has has a program, you know, that's, Reed, what's the name of that?
Farm preservation,
Huh?
the farm preservation.
Yeah,
Act.
the Farm Preservation Act, where you can, you know, it works for some people if you have plenty of money, but if you're the farmer who has a farm that, that's your piggy bank, that's your retirement plan, doesn't necessarily work that great for that person. The Transfer of Development Rights Program is a new thing, and what we would have to do is create a receiving area. We'd have to look at all the utilities and the infrastructure, and we have to create receiving areas, and then basically a person could sell the development rights of their property without selling their property to a developer. And that developer, if he develops and uses those development rights that he just purchased in our designated receiving area, which would probably be inside of UGB, then we would create a point system where that developer would be incentivized to buy that man's development rights or that woman's development rights or whatever the case may be. If we create that program, then we have to come up with a metric that determines what those points are worth. So we assign a point value to a farm based on different factors, soils, size, road frontage, all these different things. And we would come up with with how we create that point system. Then we would come up with this metric. The county commission has to approve this. This would be just like creating a zoning classification. And so this has to go to the county commission. So the county commission would then vote on that what we come up with here. Of course, they don't have to do it, but that is I think it's a good tool. Changes nothing. If we create all these zones and these receiving areas and we put the law in place, it changes nothing to the landowner unless they just choose to do it. It is just a tool that person can do if they want to stay in the house forever and they want to transfer the land to their kids, but it can't be developed. Once they sell the development rights off of it, it cannot be developed. So that's a good way. It's a good tool to keep farmland, because they can negotiate and sell those development rights on the open market and get what it's worth. And it may be worth more to one developer than it might be to another. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a
Rutherford County's already
complicated
done
thing.
it. Rutherford County's been doing that for a couple of
Really?
years.
See, I was told that nobody's doing
Yeah,
it.
I know a couple of people. It's basically, it's like the old wetland mitigation. You're selling the rights.
There is that program for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they're doing that with land now.
Okay, but that's what I think that we should do, is create that tool so it gives landowners another option. So that they can be made whole, they can get their retirement value out of that farm, but then continue to stay there and then keep passing it down. And then when a child or a grandchild or whatever inherits that land, the tax penalty on it is not so bad because it doesn't have the value that it would have had if they hadn't done that. And so it helps you keep, like if you inherit something, it helps you keep it. And so anyway, I just think it's a good program. And I just think it adds another tool to the toolbox. It changes nothing. It doesn't change your tax status. If they don't exercise, they don't do anything, nothing changes.
Stays in the green belt.
Just stays in the green belt, yeah. So,
All right.
Next meeting, 96 through, we can go on without a designated county commissioner on this land use plan. We're not taking votes or anything, so
if we're not voting, yeah.
Yeah. finish it out, Mr. Chairman. It's only 30 more pages.
Chris, can we, is everybody through with their comments on page 95? Can you, from our last meeting, we talked about road width and, simple lot. Can we just rehash that just so everybody knows where we are on that?
Well, and I
And I
asked
want Alan to
Brian.
give us an update on the decentralized.
Okay.
And I asked Brian to be here. Mark had to leave, I think, but to put his 2 cents worth in on how wide a road if there were a development down it.
Right.
And if you want to let him go so he can leave, he's been on duty
Okay.
all day long.
We discussed that, didn't we?
Well,
I'm sorry?
Mark did, highway department. So
I don't think we made a motion.
no, we haven't
I
voted.
think
and
we had a conversation about it,
Yeah.
and we were leaning towards going from 18 feet to 20
20.
feet
But I
for
wanted,
a major subdivision.
but that, I wanted Brian as fire department to either sanction that or say 22 or whatever. That's the reason I asked him here tonight. So if you'd let him go, Mr. Chairman, then he could leave.
Go ahead, Brian.
This is for a road coming off of a major subdivision, correct?
Yes.
Am I understand that right? Okay. Our widest truck that we have is 8 foot and 10.5 inches width-wise. So we couldn't, on a lot of our roads, we can't get 2 trucks by. Some roads we can, some roads we can't. Our engines are a little bit narrower, so we could pass 2 vehicles on an 18-foot road. Main thing is jacking. You know, if we got another way to come in, that's good, but some of the roads, you know, there's only one way in, the closest way is one way in. So more room we got, the better off we are. But if 18 foot, which I decide, we can manage that. If you want to go 20 foot, we like that even better. So more room, the better it is.
Brian, we talked about the width of driveways coming in off major roads. I spent a couple hours a day driving through some of the back areas. Every culvert's been in half the culvert. We had talked about having 26-foot entry points off of major roads turning into driveways. I've talked to the ambulance drivers, I've talked to some of the guys on the fire truck. They said that is a nightmare when you come and they got a tree and they got a 12-foot driveway and the culvert's 13, 14 feet, trying to get a
They
truck
got rock
in.
columns up on each side of the driveway. And there's some driveways our tankers cannot pull into, we have to back into. And just turn a little bit sharper backing in than we can going forward, so engines aren't too bad.
And we're just talking about the first 12 feet. We're
Yeah.
not talking about the whole driveway.
So why we're turning in, especially if you're on a, 18-foot road, you can't, it's hard to swing out to get back in, so.
I know on Reed's Road, I was on it today. If you go to swing out, you're in a 4-foot drop off.
We like ditches.
But you know why my entrance is so wide, because we get tractor trailers in and out. But we have a 50, 60-foot entrance. You know, it throttles down when you get 50 feet in.
Right.
But our primary coming off the road is really
But it's
wide.
for that reason you don't have a wide enough road to make a turn.
Right, we had to do that in order to get a rig in.
So we need, well, and I want that on the next meeting so we can get that approved. And then the simple lots, make sure everybody is updated on that, on what can be approved within a 24-month period.
All right, and we talked 3.
3 lots in 2
Three.
years.
3 lots
in
in 2
2
years.
years.
Right. Whatever.
Right.
We wanna
For
do
the
that.
same mother parcel.
Mhm.
Yes, if they wanna do more than that, that's fine. File it as a major
Major.
subdivision.
As a major.
Yeah.
And show us how
Come
you're
for us.
gonna handle the water.
Water.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're running into.
And
And the
then-
concept is in that 2 years, if the first 3 lots get in there, and then we've got a whole year after they're built to see
watch
what's
the
happening
water.
with the water. And is it have we got a problem before somebody slaps
3 more.
3 more in there? Because, I mean, it's happened on too many roads.
Yep.
We've created this problem by allowing them to just keep lining up down the drive, and we got flood problems.
And then an update on the decentralized. I know Alan's group has worked through all their stuff. I think it's been handed off to you.
Yeah, Chris kinda answered it. It's been handed off to Chris, and then Chris is gonna prepare it
Yeah,
to
kind of-
present in front of the county commission. I don't know, do you have any kind of
Just, I got a lot on here at the moment.
Yeah, I mean,
so.
I guess you're gonna wait till of course, the new ones come in and at some point, and, I mean, we were set as a deadline for a year. That was our charge.
When is
I
that?
think it was set in October. Yeah, you remember, I think it's October, I believe it's
I
what
was
it
thinking it's December, but it's coming up pretty soon.
It's coming up pretty
Okay.
soon.
Yeah.
So
We need to get it on the
if we could have it maybe by the October meeting, it probably, I think that was when it was approved.
I don't
And
remember.
then, I don't know, I guess the county commission, they may look at it if they wanna make any changes. it may have to be extended from there. Isn't that right? And then, would they have to vote on it? Would they vote on it?
Well, the committee would dissolve in a year. That was the thing.
Okay.
Your committee is good for a year.
Okay, yeah,
And
committee,
then
well,
if they
we're
extend it,
through.
then
I mean, we're
yeah,
through.
them
They just
extend it.
wanted a report by a particular time.
Yeah, yeah.
And they won't vote on it. It'll come back here to be
So
voted
I
and
guess
put in
they'll
the
just-
subregs. We'll have to have a public hearing and,
Here, we'll have a public hearing here, and then any
But I'm
changes.
just looking at the dates on that, so September, if you could bring it, it goes to the commission in October, it would come back to us in November. We would have
Yeah.
to do a public hearing, it would be December.
I can knock out that. I
Okay.
think I can knock out
Well,
that.
they need to go to rules.
And the other thing I can do and be happy to do is, once we have all of our public engagement with this, and I get everything, and I prepare everything, I can make this a whole lot more readable, and I can help Lynn be comfortable with it. Just 'cause I agree with all what you guys are saying.
Yeah.
I mean, we just, you know,
It's a good history lesson, and
yeah, I mean, you know, so it's,
Well, sometimes
It
you
is
have
what
to
it
have the
is.
history to understand the
well,
reasons.
sometimes
Right, I think
engineers
it's
aren't the best
important.
writers, so, you know, just.
We've got a lot between this, decentralized, changing, I just wanna make sure
Got
we
a
stay
lot.
on point and
I have a lot of
try to
projects.
get all this conquered and knocked out.
you know, while we don't have any developments to deal with.
Yeah, and I'm writing a report for the governor right now for my committee too, so that I have to, it has to be done in a month, so I've got a lot going on.
Good thing you like to write.
Priority for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, any other comments? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.